I want to start today with a little pop quiz. Can anyone guess what the largest fast food franchise in America happens to be? How many of you think it's McDonald's or Starbucks or maybe someone else? And how many of you wish you didn't eat at a fast food restaurant so much? Well, here are the top 5 fast food restaurants in the U.S. 24,722 Subway restaurants. Wow, can you believe that? Subway completely destroys the competition. And they have plans to open 6 restaurants per day for the next 4 years. I wonder how many sandwich artists and $5 footlongs it takes to make all that happen. But honestly, nothing against Subway or Starbucks. Definitely nothing against Starbucks. But do we really need one more food chain to provide salt, sugar, calories, and saturated fat? Okay, maybe just one more. It's not quite time for New Year's resolutions yet. Now, if that impresses you on any level, let me give you another statistic of a franchise in the U.S. that's even larger, boasting more than 330,000 different locations throughout the 50 states. Any guesses on this one? Well, according to the Hartford Institute, there are an estimated 333,000 churches in the United States. Did you know that? 330,000. This astounding number got me thinking, and as much as I hate to draw a correlation between the church and a Subway sandwich shop, think about this. All these fast food restaurants are distribution centers for food, coffee, saturated fat, and so on. And the church? Well, the church is a distribution center too, isn't it? It's a completely different kind, but at its core, the church is to be a center that distributes healing, forgiveness, grace, and hope. Hope for everyone. We've been talking about this hope for the past few weeks as we've looked at the birth story of Jesus. This hope can help us deal with disappointment, bring us unexpected purpose, help us face our fears. And today I have some news for you that is both exciting and a little humbling. As we read Scripture, we see that the church, this church and the other 300,000, is intended to be the very vehicle through which hope is distributed to the world. On one hand, that's phenomenal news. We have been entrusted with a mission far bigger than just our own story or our own life. We get to be a part of God's story. But on the other hand, we've got a big problem. The reality is, of the 300,000 churches in the U.S., many have lost their purpose. You may have heard the story about a church in Atlanta, Georgia, that decided to host an event at their church where they served fried chicken. Tons of people showed up, and they loved the chicken. So the church decided to host another fried chicken night. And more people showed up. In fact, more people came to fried chicken night than Sunday morning church. So they had to start charging for the chicken. It sold so well, they started doing this on multiple nights during the week. Finally, the chicken was in such high demand, the church turned itself into a fried chicken restaurant. True story. No more church, just fried chicken. But I got to be honest with you, I want to try some of that chicken, don't you? I'm not sure if I've ever had fried chicken that was so good it could shut down a church. But are you following me? This particular church lost sight of its mission to be a distributor of hope, and it became a distributor of saturated fat. Now, not many churches become fried chicken restaurants, but we've probably all known a church or seen one in the news that seemed to lose its purpose. Instead of distributing healing, forgiveness, and grace, too many churches have distributed pain, anger, and judgment. So we've been saying this phrase, hope for everyone, during the entire month of December. And while I believe through Christ there is hope for everyone, there are a great number of people who don't believe that. They might believe there is only hope for a few, or hope for, those who believe a certain set of doctrinal statements, or hope for white middle-class America, or hope for the healthy and wealthy. But there can't be hope for everyone when anyone is getting left out, left behind, and pushed aside. As we take a look at our world in the 21st century, it certainly appears as if there is not hope for everyone, does it? Now, hold that thought for just a second, because although we're living 2,000 years after the birth of Jesus, the exact same feeling was pervasive during the first century. 2,000 years ago, people were scattered all over the world, serving and following all kinds of gods. But in a little corner of the world, God chose the Israelites to reveal himself to and to show his love through. Now, did you catch that? Show his love through. For just a moment, if we take a peek at the Old Testament, we find God speaking these words to the father of the Israelites, Abraham. He says, "I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. Now let's read this last line together. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. How many peoples? All peoples, right? What peoples? All peoples. That may be incorrect grammar. I don't really care right now. Let's just say this together so we can understand it all. How many peoples? All peoples. And what peoples? All peoples. God chose the Israelites to reveal himself to and show his love through. God effectively told Abraham there is hope for everyone in our world. It doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, what they've done, race, color, creed, religion. Because of God's love for everyone, there is hope for everyone, and that hope is going to come through you, Abraham, and through your people, the Israelites. Are you tracking so far? But as we read the Old Testament scriptures, we see over time the Israelites got a little stingy, a little greedy, and a little selfish. They turned into hoarders of God's love rather than carriers of God's love. God's hope no longer moved through them, but in their mind, it was only available to them, which is a big difference, right? Yes, we're still talking about God's love, but now it's bottlenecked. There's a dam built where there's supposed to be a river flowing. There are borders, boundaries, and rules in place about whom God does and does not love. You see, friends, what I'm about to share with you, this is why we celebrate Christmas. I want to show you something in the Christmas story we may have missed because we've been so caught up in the, born in a manger bit. We sometimes miss significant details. I want you to look at the first 2 verses in Matthew's 2nd chapter. It reads, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, magi from the east. Okay, let's stop there for just a second, okay? Magi from the east. Who are these magi coming from the east anyway? Well, some have called them wise men, some have called them 3 wise men, or maybe you've heard the song, we 3 kings of Orient are bearing gifts, we traverse so far. You want to sing it with me? Field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. That was kind of fun, actually. We sing the song, we talk about the gifts they brought, we even call them kings, and all of that is important to the story in its own unique way. But what we might be missing is this significant detail. Magi from the east. If you were living in 1st or 2nd century reading Matthew's account of Jesus, when you came upon this line, all sorts of lights and red flags would be going off in your head because you'd know what Magi from the east means. In fact, scholar R.T. France writes, Magi in Persia played an important role in advising the king, but were more widely known as learned men who specialized in astrology and the interpretation of dreams, and in some cases, the magical arts. Magi were found all over the Roman world, but were specifically associated with Babylonia, and that is most likely the meaning of the term the East when written from the point of view of Palestine. The Magi are scientists, astrologers, and in some cases are men involved in the magical arts. A quick history lesson in Judaism and the belief system of the Israelites will reveal to you that Jews kept considerable distance from those kind of people. So now I'm going to show you why this line, Magi from the East, is so important. R.T. France goes on to say, it is therefore remarkable to find Matthew introducing Magi into his story without any sign of disapproval. To have the King of the Jews recognized and honored first not by his own people, but by representatives of the many who were later to come from the east and the west to take their place in the kingdom of heaven appropriately set the scene for the ministry of the Israelite Messiah, who would both be rejected by his own people and send out his disciples to all nations. Now let me read you one more line to tie all this together. He writes, Matthew may well have included this story to bring out the truth that Jesus is Lord of all peoples. How many peoples? All peoples. What peoples? All peoples. You're catching on. Now, from the very beginning of Jesus' story, we're reminded there is hope for everyone. Not just Jews, not just Israelites, not just those who jump through the hoops and follow all the rules. Everyone. There is hope for everyone. Author Rob Bell puts it this way. If the gospel isn't good news for everybody, then it isn't good news for anybody. That's pretty good, isn't it? And that's why, as we heard earlier, there are so many churches, both in the U.S. and around the world, because the one we call Jesus and Lord and Savior came for everyone. And we are to be carriers of that hope to everyone. But 2,000 years later, we seem to be running into the same issues the Israelites did during the first century. Yes, hope has come to us, but sometimes we have difficulty allowing it to flow through us. Something happened over time that led the church to believe Jesus only brought hope to them and to those that look like, act like, talk like, and believe the exact same theology as them. Because of that, over time, our friends and neighbor, coworkers, along with the rest of the watching world, have lost hope in Jesus. Maybe he's not for everyone, they might think. In fact, do you know anyone who's lost hope in Jesus or the church? Now, before I tell you a really great story from the 21st century, I want to tell you one more incredible story from the birth of Jesus in the first century, okay? We're picking up Luke's telling of the birth of Jesus in verse 8. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for," all right, here it is again, "all people." Now, you know where I'm going with this, right? How many peoples? All peoples. What peoples? All peoples. In Matthew's story, we are told about magi from the east, the Gentile astrologers who played around with the magical arts. And now we're in the book of Luke, and Luke opens the birth of Jesus with a story about shepherds. Now, you remember those significant details we often miss? Take a look at this. It's from New Testament scholar Leon Morris. He writes, as a class, shepherds had a bad reputation. The nature of their calling kept them from observing the ceremonial law, which meant so much to religious people. They were considered unreliable and were not allowed to give testimony in the law courts because they came from a despised class. God told everyone, I'm going to bless you, and through you, I'm going to bless the entire world. I'm going to bring hope for everyone. But the Israelites, much like many of us and many of the 300,000 churches in the U.S., became stingy, greedy, and selfish hoarders of God's hope. It no longer flowed through us, but only to us. So God sent us his son Jesus, and from the very beginning of his story, from his birth onward, we are reminded again and again, page after page, that the hope Jesus brings is for everyone and that God brings hope to everyone through us. We are to bring hope to our friends, neighbors, and coworkers. We are to bring God's hope to both our allies and our enemies. For just a minute, okay, I want us to begin to imagine what it would look like if every church, do you remember how many churches there are in the U.S.? That's right, 330,000. Imagine if every church made the commitment to have the hope of Jesus flow through them and not just to them. Now, some of us may know a pastor named Rick Warren. He's at a large church in Southern California and is the best-selling author of the book, The Purpose-Driven Life. Warren also spends a lot of time doing development work in Rwanda. At a conference a couple of years ago, he said, in Rwanda, one of the leading reasons for the high mortality rate of children is malaria, which happens to be a completely preventable disease. We talked as a team and knew if we could just get mosquito nets to every home in Rwanda, we could virtually eliminate malaria. But the dilemma we kept coming back to was, how do we get mosquito nets into every home? Warren went on to explain they came up with a dozen different ideas, including using hospitals as distribution centers. But after they mapped out where all the hospitals were located, they realized there aren't enough of them to get a mosquito net into every home. So they thought of medical centers and mapped them out, but came up with more bad news. There are simply not enough centers for distribution to get them into every home. Then someone on the team asked, what about churches? Like every other idea, they created a map of all the churches in the country, and surprisingly, the dots filled the map of the whole country. Consequently, the best way to distribute mosquito nets was through churches. If they worked through churches to distribute these life-saving nets to every home, malaria could be eliminated, bringing health and hope to every family in that country. Then Rick drove the point home to his audience saying this, there are more than 300,000 churches in the U.S. alone. If the church really is the distributor of love, grace, mercy, and hope, is there anything we can't accomplish? You know, over the past few weeks, we've been asking people at every location in Chicagoland to write down their story of hope on these cards. I've absolutely loved reading each one that has come through my campus, and I want to read one from a woman named Lisa. Here's what she writes. This year, I set out to be a better person. I needed spiritual healing and joy. I came to community about 4 months ago and immediately felt what I had been missing. I felt so much love, welcoming, and joy. Every week has been great. I feel closer to God than ever before. That being said, recently, someone came into my life who had no one, no friends, and no family to speak of. I felt moved to befriend him, and so we invited him to our home for Thanksgiving. He was so happy. After dinner, he told us part of his story, which includes attempting suicide on 3 different occasions. But now, for the first time in a long time, he felt accepted and cared for. I hope he knows he has a true unconditional friend in me. Community gave me hope, as well as the ability to provide that same hope to a lonely friend. Isn't that good? You know, we as a church are to be carriers of God's hope. We have an incredible opportunity to bring his hope to every home, every neighborhood, every fast food restaurant, and every city in the U.S. and around the world. Now, do you know who the most important person at McDonald's is? Well, according to the CEO of the company, it's the person who hands the hamburger across the counter. Without that person, nothing from McDonald's would ever get distributed. And God has told us all peoples on this earth will be blessed through you. The most important person in the distribution of hope is you, and it's me. So let me ask you, who in your life needs the hope of Jesus in their life? Maybe it's a neighbor, a coworker, or a good friend. Maybe it's someone who's written off Jesus in the church altogether. Who knows? Maybe you've written them off as a person who would ever give a shot to Jesus. Maybe you don't think they deserve God's grace. I don't know. But the story of Jesus reminds us that hope is for everyone, our friends, neighbors, family members, and even our enemies. So who is the person you need to distribute hope to today? Can you imagine what could happen if all 330,000 churches here in the U.S. believed we were to be distribution centers for hope and grace and peace? How amazing would it be if we were relentless in our desire to see all peoples know the hope that Christ brings? Not just a select few, not just those who get, everything right or believe the exact doctrinal points that you and I do, but hope for everyone. This hope for everyone world is why Jesus was born. He didn't come to earth for a select few. He came for everyone. The magi, the shepherds. He came for you and he came for me. And it's through our saving, hope-filled relationship with Jesus that we can distribute hope to the people of the world. How many peoples one last time? All peoples. What peoples? All peoples. There is hope for everyone.